Hi guys, in this video we're going to take a look at the chapter 25 story from the Ecce Romani textbook. So in this chapter you're going to get introduced to a new grammar topic, fourth and fifth declension nouns. So we're going to come back to the idea of how we group nouns, what their endings are, how we use them, the cases, all that comes back into play. Before we deal with anything though, like I always say, when you get the stories, the first thing you want to do is memorize all the vocab. So go through the vocab list, make sure you've got it under control, you feel confident in it, look at any derivatives you can find to help you sort of associate these words with English if that helps. Just do what you can do to make sure that you know the words, because it's really hard to translate and read when you don't know what the words mean. Then what you want to do is go back and look through the grammar. Like I just said, it's fourth and fifth declension nouns. We'll do a little review before we dive in this video, but make sure you feel confident in it. Go through the textbook, do what you have to do. Any way you can just make sure that you feel confident with these through practice problems, because again, fourth and fifth declension nouns will show up in this story and all the stories moving forward. So you want to just make sure that you feel comfortable with it. The last thing you want to do is make sure you're reading this story out loud. So find a partner, anyone from class or anyone who can read this to you, have them read it to you so you can listen to the story, and then you read it back to them. So you're working on your pronunciation, your speaking, your listening. Bring all those skills in, because they're all going to help you with understanding. It's really hard if you're cutting off those skills and only doing reading and translating. You can still understand it and do well, but it's just easier to bring all your abilities in and just understand the story from a bunch of different points of view. So now that we have that under control, let's dive in with a little bit of grammar review. Like I said, the thing that we're after in this chapter is noun declension, specifically fourth and fifth declension nouns. So you want to remember that we group Latin nouns according to their endings. So basically what we uncovered is that there's a pattern in the language. These patterns let us put the nouns into groups, which we call declensions. It's just sort of a grammar term for groups of nouns. And the idea is that if a noun is in a declension, every noun in that declension uses the same endings. That's the general idea. So it's a way of grouping all these Latin nouns, and there's thousands of them. It lets us put them into nice, kind of clean, organized groups, which will help you with translating. So far, you've seen 3 different noun declensions, right? We call them first, second, and third declension. So the idea is you can tell which declension a noun belongs to by looking at its genitive singular ending. So when we write out nouns in the dictionary, we always give 4 pieces. You'll get the nominative singular, the genitive singular, the gender, and then the English translation, right? The second part is the genitive singular. That ending is unique for each declension. So if you can look at the genitive singular, you'll know what declension your noun belongs to. So for example, if that genitive singular is an AE, you know you have a first declension noun. A long I is second declension, and an IS is third declension. So if you looked at an example, arbor, arboris, you can know right away that one, it's feminine, which is important. That's what the F dot is doing. And you know that since the genitive is arboris with the IS, it's a third declension noun. Now you know where to look on your noun ending chart and what endings this noun will use. It just helps you kind of organize everything in your head. So in this chapter, like I've been saying, you're getting 2 more declensions. Again, like I said here, there's no real trick to it. It's not to confuse you. There's just 2 more groups of nouns. Luckily, there's not a ton of new words that are going to go into these groups, but it'll help you kind of finish out the chart and understand any type of Latin noun that you're going to run into. So you do the same principle. You look at the genitive singular form of your noun to know what declension it belongs to. So fourth declension nouns have a US. The example I put here is senatus, right? Senate. You'll look in that second piece and see the long US. That means it's a fourth declension noun. Most fourth declension nouns are masculine. Then we have EI. The E with a long I is the fifth declension genitive singular ending, right? When you see something like that, the most common example we've seen so far is dies, da, right? Day. They're mostly feminine, right? And they have that EI as their genitive singular ending. So once you have that, again, there's no real trick to it. It's just kind of organizing everything and making sure you feel comfortable. This is our noun ending chart, right? If you laid them all out, all 5 declensions. So there's no real, trick, like I keep saying, to using fourth and fifth declension nouns. You already know how to use them, right? If you know what nominative case means, you know how to use a fourth and fifth declension noun. The only thing we're doing is just getting a different set of endings. The trick is to keep fourth declension noun separate from second, and fifth separate from third. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you look at the fourth declension, there's a lot of U's there, us, ui, u. That kind of looks similar to second declension where you have us and right? There's some similarities there. So it's really important that you know what declension your noun belongs to so you don't get confused. Same thing with fifth declension. There's a lot of E's going on in the fifth declension, same as third declension where you see E's all over the place with ace and M. You just want to keep them straight. So knowing what declension your noun belongs to by looking at the genitive singular ending is really, really important. That way you know where on the chart you're supposed to be looking and what endings your noun will use. So now we can look at the second piece of the grammar for this chapter, which is the partitive genitive, sometimes called the genitive of the whole. The idea here is actually pretty straightforward, and you've seen this use of the genitive before, but now we can kind of formalize it with some notes. The genitive case is often used to refer to a smaller piece of a larger whole. So the example I like to use is in English, if you were to say a piece of the pie, you'll notice that we say of the pie. You're talking about a smaller piece of a bigger whole. The of the entire pie is kind of the idea. And it's very similar to Latin because we're using the English word of, right? And we know that of is a common translation of the genitive case in Latin. You're seeing something similar with phrases like satis temporis, which means enough time. Literally what's going on here, though, is satis means enough. Temporis is a third declension genitive singular. So you're saying enough of time, meaning of all the time that you could possibly have, we need one small section of it. Enough is kind of the idea. So you can go through, and I'll point these out as we go through the story, but you can go through the textbook and look at a few more examples. It's not a particularly complicated idea. If you just remember that usually when you run into the genitive case in Latin, you translate it as of, you'll be able to do this pretty naturally without having to stop and think of, wow, I'm looking at a partitive genitive. You'll still be able to figure out what's going on, but it's good to just kind of review a little bit and make sure that you've got the grammar under control. So when you come across it, if you're wondering why you saw phrases like satis temporis, enough of time, but your book is translating it as enough time, this is what's going on, right? There's partitive genitives there. So just take a look, and you should be okay. It's not a particularly complicated idea. So now we should be ready to start translating the chapter 25 story and take it piece by piece. So again, we're going to color code it with red being nominative. We'll have blue as accusative. The purple or pink color is going to be ablative. Green will be the genitive, and yellow will be the dative, right? If we run into any vocatives, we'll use orange for that. Okay, so color coding it just helps you kind of see the cases and hopefully brings the story to life a little bit so you can translate it more easily. So we start with Iam dies erat. So now it was day, right? Dies erat, it was day. We have Magnus erat clamor in urbe. So erat, again, there was a Magnus clamor, a big or loud shout. Where? In urbe, in the city, right? A big noise in the city. So in urbe is ablative because you're talking about being inside the city. They're in Rome at this point. Then we have servi ad forum magno tumultu onera ferebant. So our subject here is servi, the slaves. What are they doing? Ferebant, they were carrying, right? Ad forum is a prepositional phrase to the forum. It's just telling you where they were going. So the direct object here, rather, is onera, right? Onera is a neuter word, onus, burden, and it's plural, right? So the A could either be nominative or accusative plural, but in this case, we already have a subject, so it's going to be accusative, right? So the slaves, servi, ferebant, they were carrying onera, the burdens or the loads, right? Ad forum, to the forum. And then we have the ablative, magno tumultu. It's explaining how they were carrying these. How are they doing it? With a loud commotion, right? Tumultu, with a loud commotion, lots of noise is the idea. So they're being very noisy while they're doing this. Undique, clamor et strepitus. So on all sides, undique, right? Clamor et strepitus, noise and shouts, or shouting and noises, you could kind of say. So there's a ton of noise, there's a lot of shouting happening. There's a lot of uproar in the city as people are moving back and forth. Sed nihil clamoris, nihil strepitus, ad marcum pervene. So here we have our first set of partitive genitives. So literally we have nihil, which means nothing, and clamoris, which is genitive, of the shout, right, or of the shouting. So nothing of the shouting, meaning none of the shouts. It's talking about a smaller piece of the larger whole. So of all the shouts that could possibly be there, none of them did something. Pervenit means they reached, right? So you're saying, but none of the shouting and none of the noise reached Marcus, pervenit ad Marcus, or went up to Marcus or reached him, right? So he doesn't hear any of it, is the idea. Now we have in lecto stertebat, nam defessus erat. So in lecto just means in bed. Stertebat means he was snoring, right? So it's talking about Marcus. It's imperfect tense. He was snoring because defessus erat, he was tired. So he's in bed, he's sleeping, he's snoring away, he doesn't hear any of this. Sextus quoque in lecto manebat, sed dormire non poterat. So Sextus also, quoque, manebat, was staying or was remaining in lecto, in bed, right? It's ablative because he's in his bed. There's no motion involved. But non poterat, he was not able, dormire, to sleep. There's our complementary infinitive. So Sextus wasn't able to sleep. He's lying in bed, but he's not actually sleeping, like Marcus is. Clamoribus et strepitu excitatus, jam cogitabat de omnibus rebus quas titus heri narawera. Right? So a long sentence, but we have excitatus, he was woken up or roused, you could say, right? By, we have two ablatives here, clamoribus et strepitu. So by the shouting, ablative plural, and the noise, strepitu. There's our, and again, strepitus, I should have pointed out, is our fourth declension noun, which is why you're seeing strepitu with the long U. So he's woken up, excitatus, by the shouting and the noise, right? So he's lying in bed, but he's already been woken up. Now, cogitabat, he was thinking about day. Day goes with an ablative. So what was he thinking about? Omnibus rebus, all the things, right? And again, rebus here is one of our new nouns that you're looking at. So he's thinking about all the things which, quas, right? Titus, and this is kind of setting up a new clause, which Titus narawera had told him, you could say, Harry, yesterday. So he's thinking about all the things that Titus said yesterday. Right? Remember, Titus was telling him how we're going to go and we're going to look around the city. He had shown the kids the city. So he's just thinking about all this stuff. You have quid hodie videbimus. So what will we see? Videbimus, the bi gives it away as being future tense. We will see. Hodie means today. So what will we see today? Cornelius ne nos in forum ducet. So he's asking a yes or no question. You can tell by the ne, the enclitic on the ed of Cornelius, right? So ducet is future tense. It's a third conjugation verb, and it has an e before the t, right? Remember, in future tense, for third and fourth conjugation, we use the a and the five e's. So seeing an e where we would normally see an I means it's future tense. So he's saying, will Cornelius, right? Cornelius is our subject. Will he lead nos, us, in forum, into the forum? So he says, will Cornelius take us or lead us into the forum? Ego certe forum et curiam et senatores videre volo. So he says, I certainly, ego certe, I is the subject. Ego volo, I want videre, to see. It's a complementary infinitive. He says, I certainly want to see. What are the three things he wants to see? We need direct objects. He wants to see the forum and the Senate House and the senators, right? These are the things that Sextus wants to see. So he's basically lying in bed hoping that he's going to go see all these things because he got woken up by all the shouting, all the noise that's going on in the city. So now we continue on. You have interea Eucleides, qui prima luce exierat, jam domum redierat. So you have meanwhile Eucleides, there's your subject, and we have a relative clause here. So qui is the subject, who, exierat, this is pluperfect tense, had gone out, prima luce, at first light, right? We're using the ablative to show the time he went out. So who had gone out at first light, now, domum redierat, now he had returned, or you could even say he returned domum, home. So Eucleides, who had gone out at first light, now returned home. Statum cubiculum puerorum petiwit et eo pueri inquit. So immediately, statum petiwit, he looked for, or he sought out the cubiculum puerorum, the bedroom cubiculum of the boys, puerorum, right? So he looked for the bedroom of the boys, and he said, hey boys, right? Eo pueri. So he's saying, hey boys, cur nondum surrexistis. So why have you not yet gotten up? So surrexistis is the verb to get up, right? Surgere. It's perfect tense. You can tell by the X in the middle. And you have istis on the end of it, or perfect tense ending. You all. So he's saying, why have you all not yet, nondum, gotten up, right? Just to the have not yet is the perfect tense, right? So why didn't you get up yet? Ab hinc duas horas ego surrexi. So he says, I, ego surrexi, I got up 2 hours, duas horas ab hinc, 2 hours ago. Right? So he says, I got up 2 hours ago. Why haven't you gotten up yet? Quod novum librum emre volebam in argaletum mane descendi et ad tabernum quandam ubi in postibus nomina multorum poetarum videre potes, Catullus, Flaccus, and he trails off. Okay, this is a long chunk, but he says, I got up 2 hours ago, and he says, because, quod, volebam, I wanted, or I was wanting, it's imperfect tense. You could say, I wanted emre to buy. What did he want to buy? A novum librum, a new book. So he says, because I wanted to buy a new book, descendi, I went down in Argaletum, into the Argaletum. It's a section of Rome, right? A section of the city. So I went down mane early in the morning. And what did he do? He went down ad tabernam quandam, to a certain shop, right? Again, quandam just means a certain here. So a certain shop where potes videre. There's our complementary infinitive at the end. You are able, potes, right? You are able to see, videre. What are you able to see? Nomina, the names, right? In postibus is the ablative, on the doorposts is what it means. And it's a reference to where they put, the names of different poets that they have in that store, basically. So he says, on the doorposts, you're able to see the names of many poets, multorum poetarum, right? They're both genitive plural. So the names of many poets. And he starts to say the names that he saw. And he says Catullus, Flaccus, right? And he keeps going. So he's referencing Catullus and Horace, these two famous Roman poets. Those are the people that he sees up on the wall. So he's excited to go buy a new book. Then you have at pueri celeriter inter palaverant quod Euclides ut bene sciebant semper aliquid novi docere volebat. So, but the boys quickly, celeriter, they quickly interrupted, interpelaverant. It's perfect tense, right? You can tell by the V in the middle and the erant ending. So they interrupted it, right? Because Euclides, right, ut bene sciebant, as they knew, scire means to know, so sciebant means they knew or they were knowing. Bene means well. So as they knew well, always volebat, wanted, docere, to teach. It's a complementary infinitive. So he always wanted to teach. Aliquid novi. Aliquid is our direct object here, something. Aliquid novi is another partitive genitive. Literally, it says something of the new. You can translate it as something new. So the idea here is of all the new things, he wanted to teach something of them, right? It's this idea of part of a larger whole. So the idea here is they interrupted him because they know he always wanted to teach him something, specifically something new. So they're like, oh man, I don't want to hear about these poets. They're not interested. So they cut him off, right? Then we end with quid in vis vidisti. So the boys interrupt and they say, what? Quid, what did you see? Vidisti, right? It's perfect tense. Isti is second person singular. So what did you see in vis, in the roads? So that's really what they're more interested in. They're like, we don't really care about the books or your poets. What did you see in the streets of the city, right? What did you see in the roads?